Right now, we would normally be opening our studios, greeting our visitors and sharing our art and craft practice. Open Studios is one of the most important annual events for artists across Nottinghamshire. For the obvious reasons, we've had to do it differently this year, but we're still doing it, albeit virtually. The arts have taken an enormous hit in the last few weeks, and yet it is the arts that we are turning to for entertainment, for distraction, for relaxation and for inspiration. Artists across all genres need our support, so they can keep on creating to support us. I'm Tina Bettison. In this video, I talk to 6 of the artists taking part in this year's OSNotts Open Studios. First up, I chat with Emma Mail and Jess Kemp, and then with Jill Edwards, Joy Gibbs-Price, Jo Soames and Helen Stevenson.
So I make mainly jewellery at the minute, but other things as well, like little hanging decorations and plates, bowls, coasters. It's kind of small tabletop item things. And I use a lot of colour in my work. I like it to be quite vibrant and fun. So I spend quite a bit of time cold working the glass. So using the saw and the grinder and then hand sanding, try and get clean, shiny edges to try and make it, look a bit more contemporary. But yeah, so that's basically my range at the minute. I've been doing some more work with pattern stuff and you repeat patterns and things. But yeah, just trying to be playful with it, with material.
So what got you into working with glass in the first place?
I went to university in my mid-20s. I knew I wanted to do something creative. I'd been in early years for a few years. And I wanted to do something else, but I knew I wanted to do something with my hands. I didn't, want to be stuck behind the computer or whatever. So I did a contemporary decorative crafts course at Lincoln University. So got to try ceramics and stone and all these different materials. And glass just really appealed to me. And I think it was mainly the colour. But also the experimentation aspect of it. There were so many different ways you could try and manipulate material and things. So I did like that as well.
So your open studios would have been the last 2 weeks in May. So what are you doing for the sort of the virtual open studios? What can people come and see?
Well, I thought I'd do some videos just showing people around my studio, showing them the different equipment that I use and what it's used for. I was planning on doing a little taster session thing, so when people came along they could opt to make a little decoration of their own. So I might even get the kids involved and people having a go, can see what they could have made. But yeah, so I'll do a few little videos, put them on my Facebook and my Instagram.
Fabulous, because you do workshops, don't you?
Yeah. The cabin's at the bottom of the garden, and I specifically wanted to make sure that it was built with space to have people in, because I like doing workshops. So, for either one-to-ones or small groups of up to 3, can fit quite comfortably in here. I also go out and about. I do stuff at Newark Academy, the high school around the corner, and some stuff in town at cafes and things for people to drop into. But yeah, I really like seeing what other people come up with as well, the ideas that they want to try out with the material. So it's really interesting.
Fabulous. Let me come to you now, Jess, because Jess, your work is really quite different, isn't it? You are costume design, puppetry, theatre props. How did you get into that kind of work?
That's a long story. When I was at school, out of school, I went to dance and drama classes. So I used to perform on stage and discovered that I liked the whole atmosphere of being at the theatre, but I liked being backstage. I liked helping with the props and the costumes. And while I was doing my foundation art, I've always been creative. I've always made things. I've always known I was going to do something arty. But then I hadn't realised that you could actually do a degree in theatre design. I didn't realise it was a thing, and when I found out it was a thing, that's how I ended up in Nottingham. So I came, it was Trent Polytechnic in those days, and I came and did theatre design. So we did costumes and props and design and some of the technical stuff, all sorts, quite a broad range. So that's sort of how I got into that. And then I went on into education, arts and education and community arts. So that was quite varied, lots of varied visual arts, participatory workshops, also community groups, and writers and producers are putting on community plays. So I'd make some very bizarre props and things for them. And that led to carnival. So now I make carnival and lantern parades and all sorts of, so it's very community led, but lots of celebratory community colour and light, things like that.
So is the current situation with the obviously the corona pandemic and the closing of so many theatres and festivals and so on, that must be really impacting you very heavily?
Yes, completely. Everything's gone. So the entire carnival season over the summer, so we would have been well underway making costumes for carnivals in June, July and August. Also a lot of schools work. There's a lot of summer projects in schools who get involved and things like that. So it's all completely gone. We're sort of hoping things might be able to come back in the autumn, but I think that still might be a little bit iffy. And I don't know whether that'll impact on all the winter parades, the lantern parades and things. So we've yet to see. So yeah, it's interesting time.
Well, it must be. Is it a worrying time for you? Because that presumably that's your primary source of income.
Yes, yeah. The summer is usually quite very busy, and it usually sets me up, hopefully, with enough money to see me through some of the quieter winter months. So I don't really know what's going to happen now. I've been lucky to get a couple of grants, bits of funding and grants, but that'll see me through some of the summer. But after the summer, I don't know what's going to happen. So actually, it's quite a useful time to look at where I am and what I'm doing. Because when I'm out there doing it, it's all very responsive. Lots of things happen. I often don't get time to think in between. You're moving from one project to another project, and it's problem solving all the time. So this is a little bit of a quieter time to think about actually what I, as an artist, might want to make for me within that field and within those materials and those techniques and skills, but something that doesn't necessarily have a reason other than I want to make it. So I'm starting to look at that, but I'm very distracted by the garden at the moment. So I'm waiting for the garden to get under control, and then I'll feel more creative. It's a headspace. I'm finding it quite difficult to think creatively for more than small chunks. I really want to. It's all lurking back there, but the motivation is quite hard at the moment. So it's a bit like bedding down. I can feel it all slowly sort of settling down, and I can feel myself getting ready to start doing some creative stuff, but it's very interesting.
So your open studio would be the 23rd, 24th of May, is that right?
That's right, yeah. Obviously I brought everything back and working from home. So I did manage to pop back, and I got a very quick snippets of my studio space as it is now, looking quite tidy. Managed to put it into a little video, which I did send to the Open Studios website, so that should be on my profile on the Open Studios website. And I'm now wondering if I can do a few more videos in this week, maybe about some of my process, what I do. I'm not sure I'm confident enough to go on a live thing. So creating little video snippets, I think, is achievement enough for me at the moment. So I'll try and do some of those and post them up again on my Facebook and Instagram, and send them over to the Open Studios to link up, maybe YouTube.
So if this had been a normal year, what would you have been doing at your open studio? Presumably lots of people would be making puppets and costumes and having a go with beautiful things.
Yes, I tend to, the easiest thing I do, I tend to demonstrate silk painting. Silk painting crops up a lot in my work, in costumes, but I do also use it for non-performance. I make cards and I do little paintings, or I use it on banners. So I tend to do silk painting as a demonstration, because I do that a lot in the community, a lot with groups. It's an easy thing to have a go at, and it's very quick and very colourful. So that's usually the interactive element. And then we have lots of strange things on display, lanterns, peacocks hanging from the ceiling and things like that. So yeah.
Emma, what about you? Have you been doing arty crafty things with your children?
Do you know what? The first week or two, there was homeschooling, and they were really kind of involved. Was they were drawing and colouring, and it just highlighted to me how little of that they get to do at school normally, and they were totally engrossed by it for quite a few days. And yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. It's about it's not necessarily, I mean, to get a product at the end of it that you're really happy with is great, but it's almost like that's the bonus. It's actually the time you spend doing it that seems to be so therapeutic. I mean, I used to be a family support worker, and I put on a course with a colleague, and it was all about well-being for mums, and basically most of what we did was just sit and do crafts. You know, the kids were put in a creche for an hour or two, and it was lovely. We've got all these cushions on the floor and some nice lamp lighting and calming music, and they just sat and did nothing really complex, but some collage making, and it just gave them some headspace, and they felt we had so much really positive feedback that it was just a bit of me time, a bit of headspace, just feeling relaxed, and then they felt better equipped to get on with the rest of the day, sort of thing. And I do think it's massively important, and also massively undervalued in our society as well. I had a colleague say to me once, she was talking about her daughter who was a teenager, and saying that she looked at me, she says, oh, she's not sure what she wants to do yet, but she won't want to do anything arty, she said to me, because she wants to see the point in it. And I just felt that was really sad. I was like, oh, so some people don't see the point in art, you know. I mean, and this girl, she had her favourite bands, she had her favourite films, and that meant a lot to her, and it was making that connection, and but also doing something for her as well. And I find it really bizarre, the idea that art and craft isn't essential. It's just a luxury, but it is essential, you know, for all of us.
If we don't support the arts and music in schools now, we're not training up a new generation to take over from us when we get old and can't cope anymore, or can't keep up with the technology and the films, and there won't be the same books, stories, adverts, carnivals, all the stuff that's around people every day, the architecture, everything that's embedded in your life that comes from creative individuals. We're going to be sorely lacking if we don't, if society doesn't see the value in it and doesn't help our young people do it. So it's a bit of a worry, and I appreciate what Open Studios as a whole is doing to try and promote artists and make them more visible to the world around them, particularly now, because it is really hard. Most artists in one form or another need that contact with the public, whether it's to come and see a piece of artwork or buy a piece of pottery, something like that. So it's an interesting learning curve for everybody in Open Studios, trying to do all this in a technical online world, and it's been really nice. It's been really interesting, and it's lovely to see those artists who have taken that step. Some people go with the flow really easily, but some people struggle with it, still trying to do that. But it's opened new doors. It's offered different ways of looking at things, I think, that hopefully we can all take forward and include in our time next year. But it's
yeah. I must admit, I assumed when all this started with the lockdown and everything that the whole Open Studios thing would just be cancelled. Like, you know, that there'd be nothing. It would just be, oh, we'll just wait till next year. So to see how much effort has been put into doing these meetings, you know, stuff that's been put online, so much more with the videos and the photos and everything like that. It's fantastic to see how everyone's adapted to try and still make this an event, you know, despite the circumstances that we're in. So it's, yeah, like I say, it's been really interesting, and probably learned some things that we can use in the future, even when lockdown's finished, you know, and still be connected and do extra things. But yeah, it's been great. Thank you.
So Jill, you started out your world in textile design. Tell us a little bit about how you got into textile design, but also then how you've transitioned into the beautiful abstracts that you're doing now.
Okay, well, I trained as a textile designer, so a long time ago. I did a foundation course at Manchester and then a degree in textiles at Loughborough. And then I was really lucky, because even then in the sort of 80s, it was not that easy to get employment as a textile designer, but I actually managed to get a job with Laura Ashley. So I moved to work in Wales for Laura Ashley for about 13 years. And then I moved to the East Midlands to work for a company called Romo, who are a large company who have 6 different brands, interiors, fabrics. So I worked for them for a long time. My whole career has been as a commercial textile designer and a design manager. So I've spent a lot of time both designing myself and managing teams of designers. Colouring's always been the thing that I really loved as well. So I did that for a long time until I had a health scare in 2017. At which point, once I recovered, I decided that the time had come to finally do what I really wanted to do and be a painter. So I took early retirement in July last year, and from then on I have been pursuing my love of painting. It's been great. But then all those years as a textile designer have definitely informed what I do now. It's coming out within my work, even though I don't really mean it to. You know, it's one of those things that's just ingrained in me. Pattern and colour is just what I'm about, really.
And you do printmaking as well, don't you?
I do Japanese woodblock printing. So I carve the little wood blocks myself and I hand print those. So that's part of what I do. Again, it's mostly geometric elements. I haven't actually got any of those here at the moment, but it's a similar kind of feel to what I do in my painting, but the painting's all about colour. The printmaking is about black and white. I don't do colour in my printmaking.
Now, your open studio would have been the 6th and 7th of June, is that right?
Yes, that's right, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So what can people, if they come and visit you virtually on the 6th and 7th of June, what will they be able to see?
Well, they'll be able to see the paintings that I've got on the wall behind me. Some of these are finished paintings, some of them are paintings in progress. So I will have quite a few paintings varying in size from small pieces to 40 by 40 centimetre square paintings, which I've got on the wall behind me. I usually paint on wood, on wooden board, but I have been doing a few paintings on paper as well, so there'll be some pieces on paper. At my previous open studio, I had quite a lot of framed work, so I may try and get some bit framed, but it's a bit more difficult at the moment. So it'll be a selection, plus there'll be a lot of photographs. So there's a board behind me that shows some of the photographs that I take that inform work. And I'm going to have quite a few of those available to look at as well, plus my sketchbooks and all the other things that inspire me that people are always interested in having a look at.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Jill. I'm going to come to Joy. Joy, your ceramics, aren't you?
Yes. I am.
What got you into ceramics?
Basically playing in as a very young girl, and I then really got into pottery at school, and I was really fortunate to have a pottery teacher, which is quite rare these days. And that's what I wanted to do. Went on to do a degree at Bristol University, specialising in ceramics, and then I did a postgraduate in teaching, thinking that would be a good backup, but ended up teaching for 25 years. So a bit like other people, you're kind of balancing trying to do what's your passion with actually earning a living. And it wasn't until 3 years ago that I cut back on teaching in schools and colleges and started to produce more of my own work and start private tuition. And I moved into the pottery last year, in February last year, 2020, and I've given up full-time institutional teaching. Just as at a time when we get the coronavirus. So not ideal, but we're getting there.
So I know I was reading on your website that you've been playing with clay since you were a little girl. What drew you to clay particularly?
I couldn't understand why people would want to draw and make flat things. I always wanted to create something that you could turn around and handle. So my early work was a lot more sculptural, and it's only recently, since I've done more of my own work, that I've actually got into you'll see behind me, the more functional wear. And I was thinking, well, what's that about? And I've kind of come to look at it now, and I've posted more on my Facebook page, that I like the act of handling and sharing the pots and putting things into the pots. And I love it when people send photographs back of what they're using the pots for. And sometimes it's not always what you intend to use the pots for. But I like that element of it being a usable, functional object.
So you draw a lot of inspiration from nature. I've noticed that some of your pots and your vessels and your creations have imagery, I suppose is the best way of putting it, on there, and some of them are, just normal, what one would look at as being normal glazed sort of functional pieces. Tell me a little bit about the decorative vessels.
Yeah, the decorative vessels, which you can kind of see up behind here, they stem from drawings that I've done out in the Peak District. So I'm a big walker, and going out into the Peak District drawing, but mainly looking at the contours, the lines, the sheep trails, the tracks, the textures. And I actually do drawings, and then I do a little bit of printmaking, dry point printmaking. And then that is then translated onto the clay like a canvas. And then I use the clay canvas then to create a vessel. So bringing that into functional wear, that surface texture doesn't really work all the time with functional wear. So I've just taken elements of colour from those, and you'll see it kind of all ties together with the colours, and pulled that into the functional wear. So there is a little bit of change in direction, but I think that's like other artists will probably say, when you've got a little bit more time, you go through that creative process again and you find different directions. When I was teaching more or less full-time in institutions, I didn't have time to go through the creative process myself. I was always telling students to do that, but myself, I was finding I was quite static with where I was at with my own design process. So having gone full-time self-employed, I've had time, and especially now, to go through that process a little bit more.
Joy, thank you. I'm going to come back to you shortly, but now I'm going to talk to Helen and Joe. So Helen and Joe are, hello you two, you are savers of furniture, I think is probably the best the best way of describing the two of you, isn't it?
It is.
So you save furniture from the clutches of death, I suppose. Tell us a little bit about how you got into that, because I know, Joe, your dad was a big influence in that for you, wasn't he?
It was more Helen's dad, but my dad was as well. I mean, he taught me to restore furniture back when I was 10 years old or so. But from then on, I had a breakdown in my early 20s, and from that, as a recovery, I went on to do cabinet making, and so from there on, I've just had a love for wood ever since. So it's just gone on into a fabulous thing where you can create something so beautiful that nobody else has thought of, that nobody else has put any effort into, yet you're still saving the craft of the older generation that made it in the first place. That's what I like about what I do. It's very rewarding knowing that you're keeping a piece of old furniture alive, yet the tree that made it is even older. You know, it goes right back down to the centre of the earth of what we do, I think. Looking after the climate.
Excellent. Now, Helen, you do more of the upholstery side of things, is that right?
Recently, yes. My background is in craft, and at university I did a crafts degree which was textiles, woodwork, metalwork and ceramics. So I've got quite a broad set of skills, and then recently I'm starting to work in the ones that give me the most joy, and upholstery is something that I really love doing, and I seem to be doing more and more of it.
What I find quite interesting though about what you do is it's not just upholstery in the sense of recovering. You're creatively giving an entirely new personality often to the piece that you're working on, aren't you? Tell us a little bit about how you come up with those ideas.
It's strange, really. It all started off with a piece that we've named Bambi, which is made up of the back legs of chairs. And because they're that old, one of the things about making furniture from old furniture is that nothing is straight or flat. So it's really hard and difficult and challenging to get it actually into a position that it's something. So Bambi has these really wonky legs. And we thought, well, that's just, it's part of the personality. So I went with it rather than trying to make it better. And I think that's what we do with everything, isn't it?
Yeah, as we're working on different pieces, sometimes the piece that we're working on can fight back and can be really cantankerous and really awkward. And by the time we've finished working on that piece to completion, we've usually given it a name. Yeah, it's evolved a character and a personality all of its own.
And the clothing.
So we generally name all of our pieces now. That evolves.
Plus, it's much easier to find them when you've got a workshop full of chairs. It's like, which chair? So it's Nora.
I just love that idea of chairs taking on new characters and having names, and the work that you do is particularly interesting on two fronts, isn't it? One, because you are recycling and reclaiming furniture, so it's not just ending up in landfill or on a bonfire.
Yeah.
But also there was something you touched on earlier, Joe, which was the craft that you do as part of your recovery.
Yeah, I think for me, art is definitely a place where you can focus your mind. It's like reading a book. If you go into that story book and you go into each down the street or wherever the author's taking you, but with art, it's where you can be creative yourself and it focuses your mind away from everything else that's going on around you. I think that it's looking after your own mindset, and also being creative with it. I mean, how many people know what their talent is creatively? I don't think many people do, because we don't do it anymore. It's so I think if you can actually find something that you really enjoy, then you're likely to go back and keep going and get more enjoyment from it. And on my mental health is PTSD. I think for a lot of people in lockdown now, it's going to be either one, they don't want to be inside, or two, they do. For me, luckily, I do, which is great.
Yeah.
But for those that are stuck inside, it must be really difficult to find a way to keep a balance where you're not over exaggerating life on the outside. I think that is the main key. If you can power your thought into something else where you're here and now and in the present, then everything else will dissipate to the point where you've actually got over the problem that you were going through. It's that. So if you can take your mind off what you were on and just give it another function, another focus, then I think that's really good for mental health.
There was a very important point you made there, which was about being in the moment.
Yes.
And that's what art does. Whatever type of art or craft you do, it takes you completely into the moment. So I'm actually going to bring in the other two at this point and ask Joy, with your ceramics, how does that help you, not just creatively, but how does that help you maintain a level in your life?
I used to think when I was teaching full time that I never had a life balance. I always felt like trying to get it right was a juggle all the time. And then I realised what I'm doing now, you don't have work hours, because what you're doing is what you love. It's a passion. So I can be working and working and working, and the time just goes because I'm loving what I'm doing. So it's a very different process. And then I just feel so fortunate that I'm able to do it. But it's taken a long time to get to this point where I think, right, I can afford to do it. And it's taking that leap like other people. But once you do take that leap and put your focus into it, because it's your passion, it then works. Yeah. You're not focusing all your energies elsewhere. Your energies are focused on what you want to do. And talking about the art therapy side, the people that come to my classes, I have so many people, some really timid, some, they've had problems and they're trying something new, and they come and you can see them flourish. And a lot come and they go, well, I'm not creative, but I just fancied having a go with clay. And I say, you don't know you're not creative. I said, just see what happens. And people produce amazing things, and they surprise themselves, because they've, like you say, your mind goes on a switch. It just switches to this different mode. And I talk about daydreaming. When you're daydreaming, you're using the right side of your brain, and then all that logic and all the rubbish that's always nagging at your head just disappears. And you can see people coming in and they'll talk for a while and they'll download, and then after about 10-15 minutes it goes quiet, because they're so focused on what they're doing and everything else is just blotted out. And I'll say to people, just watch this, it happens every time. And it just, bit by bit, it all goes quiet and everybody just gets engrossed in what they're doing. It's absolutely amazing.
It's a good feeling, isn't it?
Yeah, I think, I've noticed that too, both for myself and for other people when I'm, doing workshops and things with them. You get into that zone, don't you? That sort of zone of just complete focus on what you're doing, and everything else just disappears. You don't even think about what's going on in the outside world. It's just you and whatever you're working on. Jill, let me ask, how do you find your creativity helps you personally?
Well, I've been saying for over the last 8 weeks how incredibly lucky I feel that I have got this, because I've spoken to so many people, so many friends and family who are finding this lockdown really difficult to handle. But I have actually just have had so much time to just throw myself into what I do. I honestly, I can't imagine what it's like not to have something like this. It's been fantastic for me in a way, because I've just been in here day after day creating. I've produced more work than I've ever done since I finished work last July. I've produced more in the last 8 weeks than I ever have, and I just feel like I'm so lucky to have this. I mean, I know that a lot of people have been taking up other kind of creative activities in the last 8 weeks, but I feel so lucky. And you know, as other people have said, it's just, you just get in that zone and you don't want to stop. I mean, sometimes I really just think having to go and have a meal is a bit of an inconvenience, because I just want to carry on, you know. And I mean, my studio is now at home. I'm not in the studio that I rent. I'm in my home studio, so the temptation is even greater to just come in and be here night and day. But yeah, I think having some sort of creative outlet is really, really important for people. And as we've heard before, I hear lots of people who say to me, oh, I don't know how you do what you do, I can't paint, you know, I was told in school that I was really rubbish. And I just think, you know, just play like you're a child, have fun, do all those things that you did as a child and that you loved. It doesn't matter what the outcome is. It really doesn't matter. Eventually something will come out of you. Nobody can say what that will be, because it'll come out of you. But I think that's the really important thing, is just don't ever be put off by other people. If you want to have a go, and the point will come at which you finally decide what it is that you really love. And I just feel so lucky that that's what I've got. And I mean, I'm lucky that my whole career has been that, but now especially, I just think anything I've got inside me is coming out in my work. And so that's the way I kind of deal with stuff, really. So yeah, just very lucky.
I hope you found listening to these artists as inspiring as I found talking with them. All the artists taking part this year are featured on the Open Studios website, which is www.osnotts.co.uk. Individual profiles link you to each artist's own social media and their own websites. Inspire are running a virtual exhibition of artists at work on their website, which is www.inspireculture.org.uk/OSNotts.